We live?
We are live. Okay. Well, good afternoon. This is John Millen, and I am on behalf of CEED, the Center for Economic and Economic Development. I am filling in for Wayne Dorban today, who is on assignment and traveling somewhere across our beautiful country. So he had a business meeting, I do believe. So he asked me to fill in for him today. For those of you who are joining us, I'm located in Denver, and we have a very interesting guest today, and I would like to introduce to you Anndrea Hermann, who is the president of Hemp Technologies. Anndrea, are you with us there?
Yes, and it's actually Anndrea, and I am here.
Okay, I apologize.
No worries. Thank you, John, so much for having me.
And Anndrea, perhaps let our listeners know where you're located today.
I'm based in Manitoba, Canada.
Manitoba. And how is the weather up there today?
We're actually having really great weather, but we know winter's going to be on us soon, and some point in time, I'm sure we'll hit that minus 40 Fahrenheit. So we're enjoying the last sunny days we have.
Well, hopefully not too soon, anyway, and you get to enjoy some nice weather.
Mm-hmm.
Anndrea, please maybe tell us a little bit about yourself on a professional level right now, and what you are doing.
Absolutely. As John stated, I am the president of Hemp Technologies Global, and you can check us out at hemptechnologies.com. In addition, I am a professor at Oregon State University, assisting in launching the first 4-credit university-level course solely focused on industrial hemp. It's called WSE 266, which I was able to bring together upward of 20-some-odd other lecturers to present information pertaining to industrial hemp. It is an eCampus course that can be taken anywhere in the world, 4 credit or as an audited course or extended education. In addition, I am the current president of the Hemp Industry Association, the U.S.'s leading national nonprofit association, growing every day, including our state chapters that are coming on, really being the next driving force working within the states. Special committee member to the Canadian Hemp Trade Alliance, in addition to other memberships into national associations supporting organics, non-GMO, and the right to grow.
So, an obvious question, and for those who may not be so familiar with the term hemp, perhaps give our listeners a little background into quote-unquote hemp and its attributes.
Well, industrial hemp has a long historical place in not only history in the United States, but really globally as you look at, as cultivation grew and the need for early on ropes and different materials that were coming out, produced really on economies of scale, plantations throughout the U.S. in addition to globally. Industrial hemp is part of the cannabis plant family. It is a crop that's grown principally for its food, fiber, and other components that are now being discovered as we have more and more legitimate research that's coming on delivering what industrial hemp is. As you can see from the picture there, that's myself in an industrial hemp field that was being grown for production of grain, which will be produced which was produced into hemp oil, protein powders, hulled hemp, and a variety of hemp products that you can get on the market pretty much anywhere in the world.
And one item of note that we did know, we know that the famous actor from Gunsmoke, Dennis Weaver, had a very large impact in your life. Perhaps tell folks a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'm really thankful. I never had the opportunity to meet Dennis Weaver and thank him in person, but while I was in my undergrad at then Missouri Southern State College, which now is Missouri Southern State University, which was Dennis Weaver's alma mater when it was a junior college in Joplin, Missouri. And he, after, he became an environmentalist late in life, and I actually got introduced to him in a different framework from watching Gunsmoke with my grandma when I was a kid. We had a documentary in a course I was taking while I was in high school, an entrepreneurship course, and the documentary was about Dennis Weaver's tire home. So that was how I was introduced to Dennis Weaver. And then while I was attending Missouri Southern State College, Dennis had keyed this term ecolonomics and had come to Missouri Southern State University to really help put together a kind of like a capstone course which incorporated biology, political science, economics, and sociology. And from that, I said, oh, this is perfect, right up my alley. And thankfully, I had a great leadership from my professors at Missouri Southern, and namely Dr. Jim Jackson in the biology department, which was my guidance counselor, who had suggested for me to become involved in this capstone course. And then when he really started talking about what my passions in life were, said that, my passion is really about industrial hemp. So what we were able to do was take the philosophies of ecolonomics and incorporate that into a Bachelor's of General Studies and focus my entire Bachelor's of General Studies on industrial hemp, but using the principles of ecolonomics, which shaped my future and shaped how my undergrad university work pushed forward. So I'm thankful for all the professors that really helped me facilitate and build my own bachelor's, but based on the ecolonomics principles.
And so, Anndrea, perhaps define in your own words then. I think those of us who have been around it for a while understand it, but perhaps give us a definition of, in your mind, ecolonomics.
Ecolonomics is a way of looking, for me, at creating a sense of sustainability, not to greenwash that word, but a sense of sustainability, whether or not we're looking at an agricultural program or something in an office place. And we don't know what will actually happen first, whether it's an economic pressure, a biological pressure, a social pressure, or thought that comes within the community. So this is about focusing on a community, whether it's in an office or in a larger scale industry, on how we can use those principles to help shape sustainability within our sectors.
Very nice. Perhaps very simple. The way we always use it here in some respects is the blending of the economy with ecology, and finding the best ways to go about both and tying them both together. So perhaps you touched on it a little bit, watching Gunsmoke, Dennis Weaver as a young girl. Why don't you tell us where did you grow up? A little bit about your background.
Yeah, I grew up in Joplin, Missouri, and I used to go over to Baxter Springs, Kansas, and spend time with my grandma, where we would always watch Gunsmoke when she got off work late at night and really have a can of beans together, which was such a great memory. So I was born and raised in Joplin, Missouri, and then immigrated to Canada in the summer of 2004 after having my internship, which was facilitated through Missouri Southern State University in the Ecolonomics program. Well, there's my mom.
And we'll assume the young one there is you.
Yes, that is me. I do believe that was at my grandmother's house.
So how old were you there?
I think I was maybe 3 years old.
That's about what I was going to guess. So let's stay on your childhood a little bit. So let's think back a little, and it'll probably be very easy for you because you're not that old. So you were 15 years old when you were growing up. It's a beautiful Saturday afternoon, and in Joplin. What would you find yourself doing?
Oh, at 15 years old, I was definitely hanging out with all of my friends at Hampshire Terrace Apartments on 20th Street, and a group of girls. We ended up actually becoming known as the 20th Street Girls because we would always hang out together. And we all lived in a low-income apartment block, and I made some really great friends that I'm friends with still today. So it was a lot of hanging around the park, riding our bikes, popping up to the school and the local park. And there's some of my long-term friends back from Joplin, Missouri when I was older than 15, but we still are together today. So when I go home for visits, it's great to see these ladies, and had the opportunity to see some of them just this past August as I was celebrating my 20th class reunion.
It's amazing when you look at old photos now, just they're a little different than looking at today's digital photos. But yet they're beautiful in their own way. So
absolutely, and a picture of a picture.
Now you mentioned, you briefly touched on Dennis Weaver as someone who had quite a bit of influence on you in your youth. Maybe can you expand on somebody else or a couple people that might have had a larger influence on you or an influence on you with what you led to down your career path to this day?
Yeah, I always had some really impressive teachers going along school. I mean, Jane Hutchison, when I was like in the second grade, I remember her singing great songs with About the States. And she was a runner, and I always really looked up to her. And then as I went along through school, definitely, my family has always had faith in me. And when I said, industrial hemp is a passion, has stood by me, and thankfully I've had a lot of support throughout that time. And of course Dr. Jackson at Missouri Southern State University, who really said to me, Anndrea, what are you passionate about? What do you think the world is being wronged? And I said industrial hemp, and he told me go make something happen. And with his encouragement and guidance with Dr. Bay and the rest of the staff there at Missouri Southern, it really helped shape my belief in the fact that academia can push you into a position and encourage you to place yourself in a position to where you can really do what you want to do and what you love to do in life.
Interesting. Very interesting. Well, you touch on academia. Maybe we'll sidetrack just a touch, from where we normally go to, and perhaps tell us a little bit about now the course that you teach online as far as academia, and just what the course, what you're teaching, what it offers, and a little bit more of the the overall foundation of the course that you're teaching.
Absolutely. Well, the course is offered through the eCampus segment at Oregon State University. It is a really leading light, and I'm very proud to be part of. It's through the College of Forestry, Wood Science, and Engineering, and it was a course that was really developed to help roll out eCampus course for the new renewable materials section underneath the College of Forestry. Now, I've had students from all over the globe take this course, from all ages, from first-year students to seniors that are doing extended education that want to come on and learn more about industrial hemp. I've had military service persons and their spouses take the course. The course does last 10 weeks. There are 3 segments that are posted each week, an opportunity to present a term paper and a creativity project, which is one of the funnest projects that I think we have in the course, because I really want people to use that creativity project to present what they care about. If they want to write music, write a song about industrial hemp. Do you want to teach elementary school? All right, put together a project to educate elementary students and really allow them to grow into their own, as then they can take that opportunity and turn that into some undergraduate work so that we can drive research. Because with that research, it adds legitimacy to the industry. So I'm hoping that this course will help shape the next generation of researchers and also open up the eyes to students. And so many say to me, I did not know. Within the first week, they're already telling me that they have learned things. And this comes from people that I also know are well educated in industrial hemp. So that's through College of Forestry, Oregon State University, and the course number is WSE 266. It is a 3-credit-hour course if a student would like to take it for credit, and you can work to get the credit transferred to another university if you're attending one.
And so expanding on that a little bit, what opportunities are there for someone who, once they, find out that, wow, I'm really excited about working in this industry, and what opportunities are there for folks?
Well, right now you see great companies like Manitoba Harvest, Nativa, Dr. Bronner's all hiring. So there is an opportunity for you to enter right into the workforce, whether or not you've taken the course or not. You could have a background in logistics or sales, in natural or in other components, and score jobs of that sort. In addition, for students that are in school, they can incorporate industrial hemp into their undergraduate work or their graduate work, or turn what they start as an undergraduate project into a master's or PhD. So there's a lot of room to grow within academia. In addition, this is one of the students that is now a student who came into the hemp field when I was sampling. So there's opportunities to grow there. There's also opportunities to grow your own business, whether it's a small local business or taking a product national, to say.
What and then I guess moving right into it, because I think it's the next a really an interesting question, and I think you will have a very interesting answer to that people find interesting. The hemp industry is it's very sustainable, and so perhaps describe for folks, someone like yourself who's been around this for a long time, who's teaching courses. What does the term sustainability mean to you?
The term sustainability to me really is focused on, that 7 generations ahead of ourselves. So what are we doing today, pardon me, what are we doing today that's going to impact our great-great-grandchildren? If we look at agriculture, particularly sustainability to me really is focused on principles of certified organic, non-GMO, and low inputs, and really using nature to guide our agricultural landscape, as we're starting to see the market shift in that direction already. So that's a nice thing. In an office setting, sustainability to me looks at, are we reducing our printing ink? Are we using low printing ink, for instance? So these are some of the ways that we can create sustainability. In my own home, sustainability is about monitoring our water usage, paling our water out to the garden and flower beds, growing our own food, and thinking about where our waste goes and how much waste we're creating in our own homes.
Well said. Very well said. I do see we did have someone chat in, and I'm going to read this question, and perhaps, Anndrea, if you wouldn't mind answering it. Glenna would like to hear you talk about just what you love about the hemp plant.
Oh, well, that is a big question, Glenna. Thank you so much. I really love its diversity. That's one of the things, and I love the fact that it can be grown on economies of scale, which are really important. So if we look at efforts of people that are tribal people or small local communities that have relatively small acreages of land that can come together to create a greater pool to supply to that particular community. Or you can grow industrial hemp on large-scale applications for the food and for the fiber and the building material and the therapeutic properties that are coming around with that valid research. So that's the thing I love about it most, and it just makes me feel so good that the work I'm doing is helping other people's hemp dreams come true. That's why I do my work every day, is so their dreams come true, your dreams come true, which means that my hemp dreams are coming true.
And as you continue on your path, I'm sure that you come across people all the time who are in the sustainable world, in the environmental world, the green movement. Who are some of the folks that you follow now and you collaborate with, and just what they're involved with and how they interact with you, and perhaps tell some folks about that.
Yeah, from the industrial hemp side, there are great networks that have been built, such as the International Hemp Building Association, led by Steve Allen. So these are some of the groups that we're working closely with as we sort of drive forward. Also, a lot of researchers are coming around. If you look at Dr. Jim House at the University of Manitoba and Dr. Chris Dick from the University of Manitoba and the work they're doing. So we're seeing a lot of those leaders come out from within academia bringing forward, and then their students bringing forward. But I also feel a huge inspiration from what we'll say are just the normal person who's looking to improve their home and looking to improve the way they're eating, that really inspire me every day. And those are the ones that really are leading the force, in addition to all of the groups working in the non-GMO, the right to access, and of course all of the foot soldiers that are picking up the phone every day and contacting their congressional leaders, asking them to support the rights of American farmers to cultivate industrial hemp.
So moving on, I think you led us into it perfectly. And so, just based on, tell us a little bit about some of your life's experiences as you've, moved into where you are. I guess a little bit about your past, but just tell us about some of the experiences that you've had and stories that might, let people see a little bit more into you and what led you down this interesting path.
Yeah. Well, when I was younger, about 15 years old, I was introduced to cannabis, and being from Missouri, I quickly learned that we had a rich history of cannabis in Missouri, particularly industrial hemp. And from that really started me thinking about, oh, my own hemp history in Missouri. And once I was in university and Dr. Jackson and working with the economics program, him saying, you've got to go out there and make a difference. And I was really fortunate that when I sat down that day and sent an email to the Parkland Industrial Hemp Growers in Dauphin, Manitoba, I got an email back the very next day stating that they could facilitate an internship for me. Changed my life forever. I had the opportunity to go for the next 4 summers and stay on a farm, a grain and cattle mix farm in rural Manitoba, where they let me drive the tractors, take meals to the field, run fuel, work in the breeding plots, work with the summer students. It really set me off in a position of not only an opportunity to learn, but an opportunity to share what knowledge I had. When I returned back to Missouri Southern, I had the opportunity to assist with a debate that was going around called Heads versus Feds. And what I got most out of that was during this debate, which was principally about medical cannabis, or marijuana particularly, was that neither party, the Heads or the Feds, which was Bob Stutman, were opposed to industrial hemp. And that's really key right now as we move forward with our bipartisan lookout about industrial hemp as per our congressional bills.
You touched on it briefly, but perhaps expound a little bit on, are there a lot of opportunities for folks, younger, older students, whoever, looking for internships? Where would you tell them to look for, opportunities if they're, looking to get started, looking for an internship?
Yeah, often you can go down to your counselor or assistants within your campus, talk to your advisor about what companies would be interested or are currently hosting with the university. In addition, if you have an idea and you're looking at a company and thinking that they've got a really great product, you'd really be interested in working with them, reach out to them and let them know. Maybe they could give some remote work for you to just get your feet wet and say, or come in a couple of days a week and help with some filing and any information that you can pick up. In addition, you can look at graduate work, for instance, or becoming a technician in a graduate program and helping a graduate student with their work, which sometimes those are paid or non-paid positions. The tough thing about internship is the actual hosting part. So if it's a non-paid, do you have a host, someplace to live, who's going to cover those expenses and feed you? So those are some of the issues. But there are companies that are looking for internships, but really it's about putting yourself out there, getting that CV together, getting your resume together, your transcripts, and sending it over to companies of interest.
We know that you offer your course at Oregon State. Are there other universities that that you could mention that you're aware of, or maybe there isn't, that offer courses, directly related to hemp?
As courses directly related to hemp, I will say no. Oregon State University, to my knowledge, is the first and only university that has courses solely focused on industrial hemp. But what you are seeing is many university professors are starting to incorporate concepts of industrial hemp into their lectures, as industrial hemp is within the scope of what they're teaching about. So what we're looking at there is, if you look at the University of Connecticut, for instance, and Dr. Richard Pronis's project looking at biodiesel, you'll also going to see many new projects come on board since we have the Farm Bill which passed, which included Section 7606 of the Farm Bill, which was the hemp legitimacy, pardon me, which allows universities within states that recognize industrial hemp and have regulations to start rolling out at university research. You're also seeing some great research coming in on the fashion side, for instance, in Northern California. So there are a lot of academics that are incorporating industrial hemp into their academic programs.
And so I think Leigh-Ann, who's listening in online, asked a very interesting question. I think that's a perfect lead into what we were just discussing. Mm-hmm. And she was asking, what is the ideal growing environment for hemp farming? Climate, weather? And,
Absolutely.
and then also if you could touch on what are the challenges?
Yeah, hi, Leigh-Ann. Great question. Any environment that's currently growing other grain crops, whether it be wheat, oats, canola, brassicas, or corn even, in those areas, industrial hemp can be cultivated. If they're growing in dry land conditions and they're growing grain crops, industrial hemp can be cultivated. If they're growing grain crops under irrigation, industrial hemp can be cultivated. So essentially, anywhere that's currently growing grain crops can grow industrial hemp. The climate is a very favorable throughout all of them. I mean, throughout the United States, whether you're growing for fiber or for grain applications. So one of the things that's really important as we look at the environment for growing industrial hemp is also looking at the varieties of industrial hemp that will be cultivated in those environments. So one of the key aspects of the future of industrial hemp in the United States is really helping develop solid breeding programs and starting off with some very basic variety trials so that we can discover what varieties are going to be the varieties best for us to start with, and then we can use those working underneath the scope of plant breeders' rights to help develop varieties that are really adapted to the environment they're going to be growing in.
And so I guess a follow-up question, leading up would be, based on your experience and what you've seen, what hemp industries do you expect to really make the biggest impact in the next few years?
I see a huge impact coming from the building sector, in addition from the health, food, nutrition, and into the composite sector. But right now, I think a lot of the growth is going to be looking at restoration projects for homes as we start to look and move away from the desire to get out of the toxic home syndrome, essentially. So that's going to be a major move as we look forward to the cultivation of industrial hemp in the United States. But one of the key factors for those industries to move forward is going to be, number one, having the varieties that we know are going to grow. Well, firstly, we have to have our legislation in place. So we want to encourage everybody to go to votehemp.com, go to that Take Action tab, and reach out to your congressional leaders so that we can actually gain the federal right for states to start moving forward with commercial cultivation. So some of the limitations that we have right now would be lack of fiber processing facilities. These things are coming online, but right now we don't have them for domestic supply, for a consistent domestic supply of industrial hemp fibers and stock components to go into building applications. We also have a huge scope to grow when it comes to implementation of hemp as increase into the human food sector, but also opportunities that are arising in the feed sector for the animals.
And perhaps describe for folks a few products that, with regard to in the building industry that you would see.
You would be seeing such things as hempcrete, which is a combination of the inner core portion of the stalk mixed with a line binder plus water. It becomes an infill insulation, typically a non-structural component of the wall, so it essentially replaces the need for all of the pink insulation, but improves on your thermal mass and energy saving capacity, and we're seeing some energy savings upward of 50%. Some more, we're seeing reduction in some insurance. We're seeing more units being built in the United States, working within the building codes, and especially since there is now a movement within government to mandate green building and LEED building types of practices. In addition, you would be looking at non-woven bats, so a direct replacement for pink insulation, where you would use a non-woven hemp mat type of bat to replace into the pink insulation. And then there's going to be lots of composites coming out as that technology is being tested and true, in addition to components such as press boards.
And who are some of the companies, the leaders, you might say, who are developing technologies and really putting an effort into hemp and its uses in the building? Perhaps some companies that people may be aware of or may recognize or they won't recognize.
Yeah, there are many companies out there right now are educating about industrial hemp, such as ours at Hemp Technology Global. In addition, our colleagues that are members of the International Hemp Building Association, there is Cannabric in Spain, for instance. There's efforts happening with Tony Bowden and Hemporium down in South Africa, our colleagues at American Lime, and in addition to all the work that's happening in the UK. And so look at the International Hemp Building Association and look at their list of members, and those are all of our colleagues working out there in the industry. And a lot of grassroots efforts out there. You can get Steve Allen's book, Building with Hemp, and really from that book, you can go away and build your own home.
Interestingly enough, you touched on another subject and another topic that is very, seems to be of great importance to people today, and that is, food and nutrition. And perhaps tell us a little bit about where hemp is being used there and its uses and the positives.
Absolutely. Hemp foods are produced from the hemp grain, and this is what is harvested when the grower is growing pedigreed seed, planting certified seed, and harvesting the grain. And that grain is then processed into various different products, whether it be crushed for its oil and its meal, and the meal is then milled into different protein powders and flours. You can remove the hull, the outer portion of the hemp grain or the hemp seed, and get your nice little hulled hemp on the inside, so it's referred to as shelled hemp, hulled hemp, hemp hearts, or in Europe often direct in translation is peeled hemp. This is a really tasty product, and I always say hemp is a food, especially hulled hemp. If it's good food, it's good in it, on it, or with it. Some of the aspects that are prized within industrial hemp foods are its high levels of highly digestible proteins. In addition, its array of vitamins and minerals, including those trios of the zinc, the copper, and in addition to having the folates, the vitamin Bs, the thiamines, and also it's trypsin free, and which means that you're not going to get that sort of lull after you eat it, and it really helps sustain you. And it's got a very nice, soft, nutty flavor to it. So dropping some hemp oil on top of some bread or on top of your potatoes, making a salad dressing out, it really helps to add in a really great profile of flavors.
And if you could tell us one major benefit of hemp grain versus, as it's used with our foods, what would that be?
Source of essential fatty acids, especially some of the super long-chain polyunsaturated fats, gamma-linoleic and stearidonic acid, GLA, and SDA. And those particularly are not found in other quality table oils such as olive oil or flax oil. So that's one of the components that really sets industrial hemp aside, not to mind that it is a crop that can be grown for dual purposes. So you can be growing the crop not only to produce food, but you could be growing the crop to produce fiber and fuel in addition.
What is the difference in the cost, let's say, of raising, as we know it, regular grain versus hemp grain?
Well, I'm just looking here from the Manitoba Agricultural Food and Rural Initiative from their production cost. So just looking at total cost for return margins per se, gross revenue, this is coming from the 2013 analysis, for hemp grown for grain would be $405 gross revenue per acre. In comparison to wheat, for instance, at $239, and all the way down looking at flax at $286. So that's one of the aspects. Now looking at total operating cost, the operating cost for hemp is higher, a bit higher than of the other crops, but the return, because of the higher contract price, really makes the difference.
In production and growth time, are they similar?
Production is around 120 days. Really, depending on where you're located at and what you're growing for, you could have a bit of a longer growing season. Now, here in the prairies in Canada, we have a very short growing season, so we're in the ground by the end of May, and we're harvesting in September, October timeframe. So when we're seeing around a 20% growth in the industry currently over the last few years, and increase in acreage.
So let's head in a different direction here, and see. I think that people, you've had some very, very interesting experiences educationally, growing up. Has there been a negative experience in your life that might have molded you in a way to help you become a better person?
Yeah, when I was growing up, my mom worked really, really hard, so I stayed at home with my brothers a lot and helped take care of them. That taught me a lot of valuable life lessons, really how to manage a home, get home when the kids are there, help my mom out, which is really important to me, and I've learned a lot from that. In addition, from my grandmother and my great-grandma, I just saw a picture scroll through with me standing with the two of them, really helping me, learn about cultural diversity and accepting people for who they are. My grandmother was a foster parent my entire life, and really helped teach me about accepting people for who they are and not just looking at what was going on the surface, or looking beyond the skin to really recognize people. So those have been some of the things that have really guided me in the direction that I am. And then in addition, and just sticking with it, and just being adamant and staying true to who you are, and honesty is definitely the best policy, and really supporting the industry as a whole, and not just thinking about myself, and as I said, every day my capacity to help other people's dreams come true, really help mine come true, and that's what I stay focused on every day.
I think you just touched on it a little bit, but I was going to ask you, what is perhaps one key skill, or perhaps there are several that you've learned and you apply, and how you lead your life and your business life.
You're definitely looking at the 7 generations ahead of yourself. I try to think about that. What is the work I'm doing today, and how is that impacting people? Definitely have to learn the skills of multitasking, wanting to do multiple things and drive that sector. And often I find people will ask me, how do I find my place in the hemp industry? And I say, you have to get out within your community and start communicating with people and talking with people, so that they understand, who you are, what your passions are, and really going for what you love to do versus going for something that's just going to be a paycheck. So really embracing and really talking about who you are, and having opportunity to have fun, as the picture is showing right now. This is my friends at the Winnipeg Folk Festival, and we all got dressed up in matching running tracksuits to inspire people and have fun, and really have an opportunity to reconnect with your friends. And I have a sign that says right here behind me, every day I have to think happy thoughts, I have to get active, and I have to stay connected with friends and family.
Well, those are 3 items that everybody should perhaps think about doing, because that's really tremendous advice.
Absolutely.
So you mentioned, it's the 7 generations, and where do you see the hemp industry in another generation? Tell us a little bit about what your vision might be of where it might be headed. And just how much advantage can we take of it?
Well, right now there's so much room to take advantage of all of the properties with industrial hemp, as it is a growing market. There's growing interest, and applications are being discovered daily in a way to incorporate industrial hemp into existing products. Those are all coming on board. In addition, there's going to be so much growth and opportunity on, as I said, on that education side, as that starts to develop. And one of the things is really important is, joining forces with national associations and finding out your community that's actually educating about industrial hemp, and reaching out to your congressional leaders, because if we focus back on the principles of economics and how we use that in the scope of industrial hemp, one of those principles is the political side. This picture here shows a fellow Missourian, Chris Nelson. from Missouri in addition, and we're up in Washington D.C. lobbying with Senator Claire McCaskill's office. So these are really important because your voice does matter, and right now industrial hemp has a blockade when it comes to our rights to cultivate it, and we have to change that on the federal level, and that's by really reaching out and becoming a political activist and just call them up and say, I'm concerned. What is industrial hemp? What's going to be the impact in the state of Missouri, for instance, if we cultivate this crop? And now we have growth happening. If we look at what's happening in Colorado, where you're based at, and in Kentucky and in Vermont, we have legitimate research trials happening right now and legitimate production happening right now, cultivate industrial hemp. And so what I'm going to be seeing in the future is today's generations and the children that are visiting those farms today, they don't have any idea that industrial hemp is banned. Those babies that are going out and experiencing those hemp fields right now, they're just going to grow up with it being a very normal part of the farm. So I see within a generation, and what we've already seen in the past year with grassroots education such as Hemp History Week, getting out there and educating people, teens turning green, educating, university campuses conducting research, and it's starting to come back in to a topic at the family table and accepted as a food product. We're going to see the next generation not having to work so hard to overcome a stereotype of industrial hemp where people think that it is medical marijuana or marijuana particularly as a general term.
You touched on it a little bit, perhaps expound on it a little bit. Is there federal support, or do you feel that there is not federal support?
We do. We have great federal support right now with both the Industrial Hemp Farming Act that's sitting in the House, which is H.R. 525. We have around 50 co-sponsors right now of that bill, which is really important as a bipartisan support. We have one supporter out of Missouri, Mr. Clay from up in the St. Louis area, and we have support growing from all over the United States becoming co-sponsors. So right now we're growing those numbers now in the Senate bill. I think we're at around 5 co-sponsors on the Senate bill and gaining more every day. So we are gaining sponsorship, but one of the things that when I was up on Capitol Hill this past September for the Hemp Industry Association's Lobby Day, one of the things they tell me is they don't hear enough from the constituents, but when you do reach out to them, they do hear it. When you send them an email, they do get it, and it does help make the change. So just contact them, ask who is the person in charge of agriculture. Get their email address. Send them a little courtesy email when you hear a great piece of news that you want to share with them, and really encourage them to become educated themselves.
Who would you suggest are some folks just off the top of your head that some of our listeners could contact to find out who might spend a little time with them and answer some questions? Who are a couple folks perhaps you could share with us that people could contact?
Well, for instance, if you're in Colorado, you can reach out to the Rocky Mountain Hemp Association. They actually have a forum coming up that really looks at hemp laws, which these are really great. We're starting to see lots of these, associations coming on board. In addition, gaining force with the Hemp Industry Association state chapters, reaching out to your local agricultural commissioners or ag departments and asking what forward movement's happening within the state. You can always reach out to votehemp.com and speak with Ben Drose or Eric and Colleen, and they will help you guide to meeting the congressional leaders that you need, helping you set up appointments, helping you with the language. If you don't know how, I've never made a call to my congressional leaders, what do I say? They'll give you a little template to help you understand what you can say when you're making that phone call and asking them to support industrial hemp farming in the United States.
Perhaps tell us about one book that you've read recently, or a book that you are reading that perhaps is having a big influence on you or has had one.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess the last thing I just read was the Fair World Project's latest release talking about domestic fair trade. I think those are really interesting concepts as we move forward at looking about not only fair trade products in third countries or developing countries, but also our domestic fair trade. I think those are really interesting. In addition, one of the latest books I have been perusing in and out of would be Doug Fine's book, Hemp Bound, which is really looking at the hemp industry overall. And honestly, right now with school being in, I'll spend a lot of time reading the discussion questions from the students within the course, which are really enlightening because it helps me really get in and discover what thoughts are people having about industrial hemp and looking at the hemp history. And so and in addition, a lot of time assisting in reading regulations that are coming out. For instance, in Tennessee next month, they're having a meeting pertaining to the regulations that will be coming forward with industrial hemp in Tennessee. So that's a lot of it right now.
So have you come across any true students, acquaintances, friends, business folks who have become true hemp entrepreneurs?
Absolutely. I mean, you look at great companies such as John Rulak with Nativa or Hemp Oil Canada and Sean Crew and their team, Manitoba Harvest, Everbar, Alishua and Artisan Hemp Paper, our friends in the textile industry such as Recreator and Young Maven and hemp traders that are really pushing forward. In addition, my business partners, kicking off with Greg Favell and David Madera. David had passed away a couple of years ago, have really helped shape me. And I cannot forget the kindness of the Parkland Industrial Hemp Growers and the Federal Roach Farms, which took me in and really helped shape me and teach me about having humility on the farm and rolling with the punches when it comes to farming and really about industrial hemp and all of the students that I worked with over the years and the industry that really helped support me and has seen me grow up the last 14, 15 years working in the Canadian hemp sector.
And so one question I've always had, and I know that way back when, years and years ago, I was in a form of manufacturing in the clothing world, but and hemp clothing was around. Perhaps tell us one characteristic about hemp clothing that people may not know.
Well, I'm wearing hemp clothing right now from our good friends over at Liberty and Hoodlum. One of the things is we've seen the fibers and the processes to create those fibers improve so that we're getting softer fibers. So we're not talking about the burlap bag feel anymore. We're getting qualities that are of really fine linen. We're getting the terry cloth. We're getting all different sizes and shapes of clothing that's coming out. And a couple of those properties would be its wicking properties. So it's going to dry very fast. It's got UV protective properties. And so those are all things that we're looking for as we're looking at, sustainable clothing. In addition, knowing that this crop is renewable, that it can be grown with relatively low inputs and pretty much no need for pesticides for its production. So those are some of the things that are prized as we look at hemp versus cotton. In addition to the fact that industrial hemp requires a lot less water during not only the cultivation of it during the growing season, but also in the processing.
And so you mentioned the moisture wicking factor of hemp clothing versus perhaps the very, what's quote unquote in today in the sports world and the fitness world as far as the polyester moisture wicking materials. Is there a difference?
Yeah, I'd have to dig out some research to actually show some numbers, but there's definitely a difference. But there's also a difference on the fact that you're putting something natural fiber on the skin versus the synthetic. And what there has been some with our colleagues like at Enviro Textiles that have done some work looking at, the buildup of bacteria in synthetics versus in a natural product. And I can say I had on a pair of Satori's hemp pants and I tripped around a campfire and I fell on the campfire and it burned a nice hole on the side of my leg. It burned a spot on my skin on my leg but did not burn the pants. And today you cannot tell from these pants that it actually burned right through my skin. So if we look at those components also, anecdotal or not, if I would have had a synthetic material on and fell in that fire, it would have burned into my skin versus just burning through the fabric. And the fabric, I really feel, protected me from a burn that could have been worse.
Interesting. So going back to the business side of things, if you had to have folks take a look at one company who you feel is their business model is a really good one in the hemp industry world, who would you recommend for folks to take a look at?
Well, if they're looking on the side of food and cosmetics, great companies such as Living Harvest, Manitoba Harvest, and Nativa come to mind. And there are a lot of grassroots companies out there that are growing and creating great products, just like Mary Jane's Gourmet. She's got some great mixes put together. So there's a lot of opportunity in that sector. Also, if we look at sectors for salad dressing. Now, if you're looking on cosmetics, you can look at great companies such as Mary Hemster's or Dr. Bronner's, for instance. And then bigger companies like Hempsies that are located all over. In addition, you can buy hemp cosmetics or hemp lotions in the Walmarts of America or Walmarts of the world. And there's a lot of growth in the cosmetic sector, particularly that we could be incorporating more hemp oil into cosmetics for that essential fatty acid profile.
So as we're heading towards the end of our session here, perhaps is there perhaps a quote or a phrase that you'd like to mention? Do you feel folks would really be interested in and like to copy?
Well, my friends would sing this song. Doesn't take a miracle to cultivate a weed. Save your seeds. So that's really important to me, just to talk about, agriculture and industrial hemp and how this is a very natural crop that we can move forward for, and definitely, taking the time and, it's time to grow. That's what we're talking about. It's time to grow industrial hemp in the United States. It's a time to grow our industry, and it's time to grow our knowledge about industrial hemp and cannabis and help grow that knowledge in others also. So right now our key is it's time to grow United States industrial hemp.
Do you think that the time to grow is going to perhaps move forward at an accelerated pace versus maybe what it has in the past? Do you think that the technologies are there now that it's just going to keep moving forward and faster and faster and faster and become, a more prominent product in our industry?
Absolutely. We're going to see nothing but forward motion from here, especially as we have many states now, upwards of 19 states that have formal legislation in place. Lots of them are still developing the regulations that they're functioning under, but absolutely it's nothing but growth from here on out. And we're not talking only about what's happening in the United States. We're talking about what's happening globally as we look at the cultivation of industrial hemp. We're seeing a rebirth of the cultivation in the Central European bloc, more production coming out of our colleagues in Asia. We're seeing variety trials happening in Uruguay and South Africa. We're seeing initiatives coming through from India. So we are talking about a global revolution when it comes to gaining access to cannabis, particularly, and industrial hemp. And that's one of the things I'm so thankful through my radio show, iHemp Radio, as having an opportunity to invite people from around the world to come and share about their final vocabulary. And industrial hemp is a key word in my final vocabulary that will describe me when I'm gone from here and somebody wants to say, tell us one thing about Anndrea Hermann, and they're going to say she was really passionate about industrial hemp.
How do folks get to listen to your radio show?
They can check us out at ihempradio.com, and there is a Spreaker link there that will take you to Spreaker, or you can listen through the iHeartRadio platform, or check us out as we are part of the Time for Hemp Network, which is a 24/7 cannabis-related network, news in multiple different languages, and I'm just one of the shows 100% dedicated to education about industrial hemp.
And you mentioned it's on Tuesdays?
It's on Tuesdays, but you can stream the show at any day of the week.
Okay. Well, perhaps we've got one more interesting question for you. And there's a gentleman, maybe you've heard of, John Lee Dumas. He hosts a very popular podcast. It's called Entrepreneur on Fire. And he always kind of surprises his guests with one question. And I will just read it for you.
Okay.
So if you woke up tomorrow and you found yourself on another planet that was just like Earth, and all of your daily needs were cared for, but all you had is your laptop and $500, what would you do for the next 7 days?
Well, if I had a laptop and $500, I would probably make sure I was securing some internet service so I could start communicating with people right away, so I could spend the next days making their hemp dreams come true and really just sharing as much information as I possibly could with everybody else out there in the world, knowing if my time was coming. That's what I would really do. I would use those tools to be able to share the knowledge, because it's not something that I can take with me, and it's something that I have to leave behind when I'm no longer on this planet.
That's a great answer. You'd make sure you had internet service. That is awesome. that's wonderful.
Without it, we wouldn't be here today.
Right, exactly. Well, listen, we would really like to thank you. It was very educational and very informative, and hopefully you'll come back and visit with us again. And perhaps we will keep track of you. We'll listen in on your radio show. We'd like to thank everybody for listening. And Wayne will be back with you in 2 weeks. So on behalf of CEED, this is John Nillen. Anndrea, thank you so much again for joining us. And we'll be signing off for today. Everybody have a great rest of the week. Take care, and thanks for joining. Bye now.